An $18 billion deficit, a 3-year turnaround plan, but Labor and National are proposing two very different mixes of spending and cutting to get there. To make some sense of who is promising what and at what cost, joining us now is Alex Tarrant from interest.co.nz. Good morning to you, Alex.
Morning, Nadine.
Let's start with National. They're talking about state asset sales. The profit has been looked at between $5 and $7 billion, but a little bit of confusion about what they'd do with it. Can you clarify that for us?
Yeah, well, the funny thing is that the 5 to 7 billion, Treasury has earmarked that in the budget for any new capital spending, so on schools and hospitals and nice social infrastructure stuff, and that's going to be over the next 3 to 5 years. Now, National is, they're saying they're going to use that for the social infrastructure, but they have to find that from their existing capital base. That means from the stuff they already own. So in order to make that spending, they're going to have to hock some things off. Now, at the moment, the most likely thing that they're going to find those 5 to 7 billion from is the state asset sales. But Treasury technically in the accounts doesn't actually have it as the asset sales. It's just $5 to $7 billion from somewhere in the government's capital base.
Does it, though, take into account what they have to forego if they make this sale, and that is the dividends from the asset?
Well, that's the thing. That's what Labor's been attacking. They're saying, well, look, you're going to sell down these assets, but you haven't taken out any of the dividend stream from the future years in your projections. And Treasury said, well, because it's so far away, it's 3 to 5 years away, these asset sales, if they do take place, we're not actually sure whether it's going to be them that we use to get the 5 to 7 billion. And so they've said, well, until we're absolutely sure that we're going to be selling these assets, we're not going to be taking the revenue stream out of our projections. So it's sort of one way here, one way on the other.
Let's talk about Labor's policies now, because they are making some spending promises, but they're not planning to sell state assets. So how are they going to fund those promises?
Well, here's where the fun begins, because you've got Stephen Joyce, National's campaign manager, running around saying Labor's got a $17 billion hole in their spending plans, and then John Key last night said that they had a $14 billion hole. So Labor's sort of playing the long-term game here. They've said they're not, they're happy to borrow a bit more in the short term than National would in order to sort of give the economy the step change it needs in the long term. And so over the first sort of 5 years of its tax package that it announced a few months ago with the capital gains tax, it's actually going to have a $1.9 billion hole in there. So that's just the tax package. There's going to be other policies, education policies, health policies that would require more spending, and they're busy doing the fiscals at the moment, which should be released in a couple of days.
And of course they're also proposing to raise the age of entitlement for superannuation over time from 65 to 67. But does that actually save them all that much?
Well, it will, but from 2033. So they can't book any of the proceeds now, of course, because they're going to start raising the age from 2020, and it'll be 67 in 2033. From then, Mercer, which is a company that watches KiwiSaver and the supermarket, they say over the next 30 years, from about 2031, if the age is 67, then you'd save $100 billion over that 30-year period. And Nadine, that's going to be needed because there's going to be more more pensioners, and they're going to require more healthcare costs. And if you and I don't want to pay that, then we're going to have to find those savings from somewhere. But
just briefly, Alex, what are the chances that either of them can realistically get back into surplus by that 2014-15 year, given the global uncertainties?
Yeah, well, they're both promising that surplus, yes. And basically in Treasury's preview that it announced a couple of weeks ago, it said that there was risks to the downside that they wouldn't get there if Europe basically blew up. Treasury is banking on there being an orderly resolution to this European sovereign debt crisis. And as we've seen over the last few days with the Greek Prime Minister surprising everyone by holding a referendum, everyone's saying, look, it looks like Greece is going to default, they're going to leave the euro, that'll set people off. And
it doesn't look like a safe bet at all indeed, does it? Thank you, Alex.
Not at all.
That's Alex Tarrant from interest.co.nz.